Hello there. Welcome to Effortless. I'm Caitlin. I am a mindset coach for business owners who want to create more aligned businesses. And happy almost end of 2020. I'm not even going to make a lot of comments about this year because y'all lived it. You know what it was like. I do want to say that I learned a lot this last year. This is going to be the final episode of season 3, and then I'll go on my annual hiatus from the podcast for a bit. I've said this a bunch of times in the past, but if you're newer here, when I started the podcast, I had a really big hesitation around the commitment of weekly episodes for forever. And my solution was to create seasons so that I could stop for periods of rest and not have to, overanalyze and overthink it because it would just be the end of a season, right? So this is that. This is the end of the season, and we'll restart probably back in March or maybe May. Basically, I base that on when I feel like I'm really ready to say something new and exciting. So anyway, I started the season with the intention of sharing lessons, and somewhere during that, we kind of veered into a different territory, and that was really good. I connected with a lot of new people, and it felt like the right move to bring guests onto the show. And I'm really grateful for everyone who came on and shared with y'all. And now I really want to wrap this season up with the biggest lesson of all, the lesson that I'm, not to sound too spiritual, but the lesson that I'm pretty sure I've been trying to learn for my entire life. And I don't think I've successfully mastered it by any stretch of the imagination, but I can at least finally grasp it well enough to share it with you. So when I say I spent my entire life trying to learn it, what I mean is I have probably spoke to this idea before with you. I feel like it's always been there within reach, but when I really stretch out and try to actually hold it, actually grasp it, it kind of turns into smoke and drifts away. Like how a dream slips away after you wake up. You kind of remember it when you first wake up, and then suddenly it's just not there. And you're like, I know it was a weird dream, but now all the details are gone. That's kind of how this lesson has felt. I knew it was a big one, an important one, an essential one, and I'd have it for just a second before it would slip away. And I don't know what shifted that finally made it more solid or more stable, but I'm so grateful that it is. And I guess I could consider that one of those weird blessings that are hidden inside of a really crazy year. I don't know. But in saying I've been learning this lesson, I think maybe that's not the right words. I think it's more like I remembered it. Again, not to get, too spiritual for you, but I think I've lived many lives, and I can't help but wonder if this is a lesson that I've learned time and time and time again. I'm sure that sounds really esoteric for some of y'all, but it really does feel like that. It feels like a lesson that maybe my grandmother taught me as a child, and I brushed it off as being something that belonged on an inspirational poster or a card, but it's really not that cheesy. It's so much more than that. The first time this year that I had a more solid glimpse of this lesson was when I read a book called The Fuck It Diet. If you're not familiar, it's a great book. I would say it's about intuitive eating, but it's not really. In fact, the author, Carolyn Dooner, she kind of shits on how intuitive eating has been bastardized and used against us. So really the book is kind of just about saying fuck it, and I loved it and I highly recommend it. Anyway, so when I was reading it for the first time much earlier in this year, I started to connect the dots between saying I was an intuitive person who trusted myself, my higher self, my intuition, and I was a person who actively ignored, my own body when it came to food. And I have been since, the earliest I can remember is early middle school. Now, this isn't an episode about disordered eating, but this is an episode about self-trust. And that was the first time that I realized that while I claimed to trust myself, in one very large facet of my life, I was, not trusting myself. How can I say I'm intuitive in business and yet completely disregard my intuition around food every single day? That's not in alignment, right? So that realization happened earlier this year. Maybe around March or April, I can't remember. And I sat with it and I journaled a lot about it, and I pondered a lot about it, and I talked to my coaches a lot about it. And, I said, fuck it, like the book recommends, and that felt really good. And somehow that realization led to another one. that led to me realizing that I have very controlling tendencies. I like to control things through the guise of like, well, I'm a Virgo moon and I like to do lists. And I learned that for me, an unhealthy expression of that control is when I start getting so in depth with my scheduling that I like start scheduling out times that I'm allowed to, go to the bathroom and have a snack. And then I trace that back throughout my life and I've realized that's always been my go-to move when things feel particularly out of control, which this whole year has felt, right? I tighten my grip. I try to, manipulate and control things. I try to give myself a lot of rules and rigidity. And so in that realization, I once again was like, okay, fuck it. I stopped scheduling my day. I stopped giving myself a lot of times to drink water and to go to the bathroom. And I really worked on letting go of control. And at some point, I made the association that when I was controlling things, it was because I didn't trust anything. I thought that if I could make it happen, then it would happen, versus knowing that when I surrendered, things would just happen. And that trust wasn't about trusting the universe or fate or physics. It was that I didn't trust myself. I had to schedule myself and control myself because I didn't trust myself to figure it out. I didn't trust myself to do the things. I didn't trust myself to create the life I wanted. And that was pretty mind-blowing. I can't remember exactly what triggered that realization. I think it was probably a bunch of events all culminating in this acceptance that controlling things meant you didn't trust things. And I've known that. I've understood that for probably about 6 months now, conceptually. But it was kind of that disappearing dream thing where I would grasp it and then it would slip away. And then now, today when I outlined this script, it was early December and I'm writing this to be released later on this month. I woke up earlier than normal. Will is getting up earlier than normal and the cats got all riled up. So I woke up early too. And I sat down and I opened up Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which I had gotten about 1/3 of the way through and then abandoned. And I started reading the book again, just at random. And I got to this quote that finally let me really grasp the ideas I've been struggling to articulate. She wrote, "We only control what we don't trust. We can either control ourselves or love ourselves, but we can't do both. Love is the opposite of control. Love demands trust." And finally, this disappearing dream of an idea finally took solid form. Now, do I think it's a coincidence that I picked up that book and just a few minutes in read that line? No. Do I think it's a coincidence that Will got a new job that requires him to get up earlier and then the cats got up earlier and that woke me up and I decided to pick up a book and read, which I haven't done for a while now, mind you, and I got this message? No. I think it's something much bigger than me saying, hey, want to wrap up this year finally getting the biggest lesson of all. And so while I'm not perfect at acting from this lesson, I knew I had to share it with you. In fact, that's why I even started outlining this podcast like immediately. I dropped everything. I didn't read a sentence past that line in the book. And I was like, this is how I end season 3 of the podcast. This is how I end 2020. This is how I start 2021. This is what I've been trying to understand. This is what I've been trying to say and to believe and to put out there. And I've not said it as concisely or as straightforward as Glennon did. But, she's an author. That's why she gets paid the big bucks, right? But this is the biggest lesson of all. I have to love myself, and that requires me to trust myself. I like picking words of the year. So for 2021, my word is love. I'm going to love the shit out of myself this year. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for your support over the years. Thank you for your support into the new year. If you want to come hang out with me on Instagram while the podcast is on hiatus, I would really love to connect with you there. I'm wishing you a very happy new year, and I'll see you in 2021.